Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on board. This is Claire from New Venture Corporation. Currently, travel restrictions heavily affect offline events due to the COVID-19 globally, but business matching and insight sharing are still needed for industrial players. That's why we bring all our offline events online. At the third stop of APAC Solar Energy Digital Series events, APAC Solar Energy Digital Event 2021 Malaysia Chapter is the only online virtual event that focusing on the burgeoning solar development in Malaysia. Today, we will bring 3 panel discussions for our attendees. Meanwhile, we also have 2 technology showcase. Here, I would like to thank our event sponsors for the support. Diamond sponsor, Trina Solar. Platinum sponsor, Untitled, Gold sponsors, Huawei Smart PV Malaysia and Change Power Supply. All the attendees are welcome to visit their booth and connected with them. And I would like to remind all the attendees there is no break between the 2 sessions, so please manage your time wisely. Last but not least, all the attendees can join our one-on-one matchmaking events during the event, and do look forward to your participation. The organizer of this event, New Venture Corporation, is dedicated to supporting key investors and developers for successful development and investment in Asia-Pacific renewable energy sector. Our footprint covers Asia-Pacific countries such as Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, China, Myanmar, Australia, Malaysia, and some Middle East countries. Okay, now let's start with the panel discussion part today. The topic of the first panel discussion is Malaysia's roadmap for transitioning into a decarbonized country, status quo, strength, and focused. Firstly, I would like to give a brief introduction and big welcome to our speakers of this panel. They are Mr. Cho Jack, partner of Christopher and Leon. He will be the moderator of this panel discussion. Jack has significant experience advising on the development and the financing of infrastructure projects. He has a keen interest in the energy sector and has advised on an extensive range of renewable energy matters. Ms. Elva Wang, APAC Senior Sales Manager from Trina Solar. Ms. Elva Wang is responsible for sales business in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. She has over 10 years of massive solar PV industry experience and has lived in Malaysia for 6 years. Mr. Kai Liu, Technology Service Director from Shanghai Change Power Supply System. Mr. Liu has over 12 years work experience in renewable industry. He works as an application engineer of project management, and he also is a senior electrical and system engineering, specializing in PV and ESS solution engineering. Mr. Ibrahim Arif, Director of Strategic Planning Division from Sedang, Malaysia. Mr. Ibrahim Arif's role involves advisory on areas aimed to facilitate the growth of Malaysia's renewable energy industry. Prior to SEDA, Ibrahim was a senior grid planning engineer in TNB. And Mr. Gan Bong Han, the CEO of Leader Energy. Mr. Gan has more than 7 years of experience in the field of transmission and generation projects development, operation, and service of high and medium voltage equipment and system and development of renewable energy projects. And Mr. Stephen Hoare, Mr. Stephen, General Manager of APAC SVP Business Development from Green Sales Group. Stephen is responsible for operation and business development with a focus on the Asian market. And before we started, I would like to introduce all the attendees with housekeeping notes. If you experience any technical issues or have questions for speakers, please use the Q&A box, and we will share the presentation slide and recordings with you by the end of next week through your registration email. Now I will hand my mic to Mr. Cho Jack. Let's welcome.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. The Prime Minister, so to give a bit of a background as to what we will be speaking about today, sustainability is a new buzzword in various industries and is often seen as a market mover. Right? Companies that do not embrace the agenda not only take risk taking a hit to their bottom lines, but also run the risk of being starved of funds, as financiers and investors are slowly but surely picking who they lend to or invest in. right? So the Prime Minister of Malaysia, while tabling the 12th Malaysian plan yesterday, mentioned that Malaysia aims to be a carbon neutral country by the year 2050. Right? So instruments such as carbon pricing, carbon tax will be introduced to support this effort, and a comprehensive national energy policy will soon be introduced to provide long-term strategic direction to support the aspirations of a carbon neutral nation. So one of the key steps towards achieving carbon neutrality is a reduction of carbon dioxide emissions, right? And the usage of solar plants as opposed to conventional power plants will go some way in helping Malaysia achieve that goal, right? Malaysia's solar industry has grown in strides since the early days of the feed-in tariff in, I think, 2011, right? Mainly due to a mix of encouraging policies, tax incentives, and a massive reduction in prices of PV systems globally, right? Plenty of companies are now in the space, and the sustainability movement has driven plenty of capital into the sector. Right, so we have with us here today a distinguished panel, right, to discuss Malaysia's roadmap for transitioning into a decarbonized country with a specific focus on the solar industry. My first question goes to Ibrahim, right, from SEDA. Right, good afternoon. The growth of the RE industry, right, particularly solar, has been very impressive, right? I mean, the target set in I think the Peninsula Malaysia Generation Development Plan is for the nation to achieve 31% RE capacity mix by 2025 and 40% by 2035. Right? We also understand that SEDA is currently developing Malaysia's renewable energy transition roadmap. Right? But there is an impression, though, from the development plan that the government may not be ambitious enough, right, in its efforts to accelerate RE adoption, right, especially after 2025. For instance, the plan includes, right, hydrogen, right, not yet a proven sort of technology, and large hydro, which a lot of purists do not consider as renewable, right, due to its impact on the environment. So I think, firstly, what are your thoughts on that, and what will the approach of the Generation Development Plan have a bearing on the renewable energy transition roadmap, right? In fact, how will that jive with the national energy policy?
Okay. Thank you, Jack, for the interesting question. I would say it covers quite a lot of angles. I would say that that Malaysia is basically like quite, I would say, compared to other developed countries like Europeans or United States, for example, we are relatively new to this renewable energy. But as we can see, actually we are like this year is our 20th journey for implementing on the renewables, starting way back from 2001, where we introduced the small renewable energy power programs. But I would say that during that time, the take-ups are very low, and mainly is more focusing on biomass and hydro. And even after 10 years of the launching of these SREP programs, the small renewable energy power, I would say that the capacity that we managed to realize from these two potentials, biomass and biogas, is roughly around 60 megawatt only. And following from that, another policy has been formulated back in 2010, which is the new National Renewable Energy Policy and Action Plan, or we call it NRE-PAP 2010. And from this initiative, the mechanisms such as feed-in tariff and also the establishment of SEDA has been earmarked as one of the enablers to push for the RE deployment. So if we're looking back in 2010, when they formulated this NRE-PAP, the concentrated on the renewables potentials are still focusing on bioenergy and also the hydro, and with little targets on the solar. I would say that back then, if you can refer to the NRE-PAP documents, at that time, we were only aiming for solar capacity about 500 megawatt by 2020. But looking at the current take-ups, and by the introducing of the feed-in tariff, and after about 5 years of the feed-in tariff in place, we can see a better take-ups, and the solar also has become more viable in terms of financially and technically to be integrated into the power system. And after about 5 years of implementing the solar, I would say roughly about 300 megawatt has been realized from the solar resources itself. And looking at this good progress and seeing that the price has been dropped, I would say almost about 70% from the price back in 2010. And more mechanism has been introduced to further promote the solar industry itself, such as the large-scale solar, the net energy metering, and also the CELCO initiative has been formulated since 2016 to further accelerate the growth of the solar energy in particular. And until December 2020, based on my information, that we already able to realize roughly about 1.6 gigawatt of solar capacity. And this, we can see that this is quite growth, and compared to what been targeted from the policy back in 2010, we are able to deliver almost threefold of what we targeted. And looking forward, as mentioned by Mr. Jack, that we are aiming for higher targets now for the RE targets, which is the 31% by 2025 and also the 40% by 2035. The solar will remain as the key dominant renewables in terms of the renewable energy in the capacity mix. So looking at where we are today and until the cumulatively, back in December 2020, we already realized about 8.545 gigawatt of renewables. But I would say that majorly the most contributed is from the large hydro itself. We already realized 8.45 gigawatt of solar renewable energy capacity, and looking to where we try to realize by 2035 is almost another 10 gigawatt of capacity to be added in coming from renewable energy resources. But from this 10 gigawatt of capacity, as much as possible, we try to diversify the portfolio rather than focusing on and other resources. But solar remains as one of the key contributors. But as we can see that the current ongoing on the large hydro, for example, is I would say that most of the potentials are located in Peninsular Malaysia and Sarawak. And in Peninsular, I would say that we are quite already exhaustive all the potentials for large hydro. And now we are pursuing more on the small hydro through the feed-in tariff programs. But in Sarawak, there are more potentials, but the addition for the next 10 years, I would say less than 1 gigawatt, whereas the other potential is coming from solar and a bit of portions from the bioenergy itself. So looking forward and just try to gauge your consideration regarding the sentiment of the large hydro. Is back in 2019, we have some international discussions with few parties, including within ASEAN countries and also the World Bank's, IRENA, IEA, for example. We are discussing on does the large hydro can be considered as renewables. Yeah, so looking at the definitions, there are some mixed perceptions. Like if we're looking at the IRENA, for example, the definitions by IRENA, they only consider the small hydro as the renewables. But if we are looking into the ASEAN and also the World Bank definitions, they also include the hydropower as one of the renewables, regardless of the capacity itself. And I would say that one of the strategies in recognizing the large hydro as renewables in Malaysia is also as a part to support the potential growth of the hydrogen economy. So as we can see that in Sarawak, for example, that they are exploring and already embarking on a pilot project together with our national giants Petronas in terms of developing a pilot project towards the green hydrogen productions. And this development will tie with the Bakun hydropower. So with this kind of development, you will be able to facilitate for a growth on the future potentials of hydrogen economy, for example, and also to address on the potential of the hydro itself. But just to mention that for the large hydro, no doubt that the development of large hydro with a lot of the footprint area that requires, it has a significant impact to the environment and also the social around the development area. But rest assured that the government has already imposed quite a strict requirements in terms of the conformity to the sustainability standards for hydropower, environmental impact assessment, and also the social impact assessment. So all these three assessments will be done prior to the development of the large hydro, and this will also cover the area of the of the construction phase, and also later on during the operational phase, they need to fully adhere to the standards. So I would say that we're much aware that that there are concerns regarding the large hydro as renewables, but please make sure that we already take some measures to make sure that all the environmental and social impacts can be addressed and mitigated accordingly.
I think from an industry perspective, one of the concerns is that, if a lot of attention is given to these other renewables, it may take something away from solar.
Solar industry.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can share with the audience, right? So the Renewable Energy Transition Roadmap or the National Energy Policy, is there anything that is specific to solar that you can, share with us today? I know it's not yet been issued, right? But is there anything that you can, have a chat about?
Yeah, I would say at the moment, I would say that out of the 4 RE promoting initiative, as mentioned earlier, that the feed-in tariff, large-scale solar, NEM, and Celco, only one that is governing the other potentials, the biomass and biogas, and also the hydro, which is the feed-in tariff. Whereas the 3 other programs is focusing mainly on solar itself. But at the same time, we can see that they are due to the flexibility and the ease of deployment of solar projects. Because as we can see, for example, like if you want to embark on the hydro projects, like small scale, we may take about 5 years of lead time. Whereas if you want to embark on the large scale of hydro projects, it sometimes can take about 10 to 15 years of lead time. Compared to solar, as we can see that at the rooftop solar, for example, we can deliver the project within 6 months. And for a large scale, we can deliver the project within 2 years or 3 years, for example. And we can see the benefits from solar industry itself. And at the moment, the highlights is always on the solar at the moment. And in particularly that currently the government, the ministry, and also the regulators are looking in terms of how we can further facilitate the demand from the private sectors and from the industry itself. As we can see that back in earlier this year, we have already launched NEM 3.0, and with a specific allocation given to the commercial and industrial sector, about 300 megawatt, and less than four months, all the quota already like taken up. And we have received few feedbacks from the industry players that demand for a higher quota. So at the moment, we are looking into this. We are, aside from try to provide more quotas in terms of the existing mechanism, we are trying to also explore more business models. As we can see that there are also a higher increase in demands for corporate PPAs, for third-party access, for example. And rest assured that we are currently looking into this, and we are, I would say that at the best, I would say that probably sometime next year, we can have more lights in terms of the new models. And
Okay,
whereas for the additional quota, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mr. Gunn and Stefan, will be very pleased to hear that something is in the pipeline, right? Something.
Yeah, it's already in the pipeline.
Yeah, because I mean, we've been hearing that. I'm sure the industry has been hearing that for quite a while now, right? But it's just been going on and on and on, but nothing really has, come up. So
True.
Hopefully something concrete soon.
Yeah. Like ourselves are also like really excited to embark on these new mechanisms, because I believe that this will be a keystone for the Malaysia itself to facilitate for a higher growth. And like myself also from SEDA, we are also like really excited in terms of looking for the embarkation of this program.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, I suppose for an industry perspective on this, Mr. Gunn, right? To see you on panel again. I mean, Leader Energy is a well-known player in the Malaysian market, especially in the LSS scene, where you have major projects in Vietnam, Taiwan as well. I mean, would you mind quickly giving us an overview of what Leader has been up to so far, and would you mind sharing your thoughts on the recently awarded LSS4 and what you hope to see, right, in LSS5? Right? I mean, if you can throw in any thoughts on NEM, that would also be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah, Leader Energy. "27 years ago in Cambodia. We started our footprint in Cambodia in 1994. And starting from 2016, we started a renewable energy program by acquiring the 5 small hydro plants. Like what Ismail Ibrahim said just now, we are also looking into hydro, small hydro plant in Vietnam in 2016. In the same year also, we participated in the LSS1 program by Energy Commission, and we were successful in LSS1. The following year, we were successful again in LSS2. And since then, we have never really looked back. We have look into more and more solar projects. As you were just mentioned, we are now operating a very large, or 3 large solar farms in Vietnam. And we have started our footprint in Taiwan this year. We already operating about 4.3 megawatt of small scale and rooftop solar projects in Taiwan, and now developing a very large floating solar project in Taiwan. We have started also looking into C&I rooftops projects, and currently we have projects in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam and Indonesia, and also Taiwan. So we are also looking into wind as well, wind farm as part of our renewable energy program. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, as we know, we do not have the wind resources. So we need to actually go to Indo-China country like Vietnam and Cambodia and Taiwan for our wind projects. You asked me about LSS4. LSS4 is I think the recently awarded. What we can see is attracted a large group of Malaysian company, a local company, who including some of the first timer, like the first public listed companies started participating in the solar. So make the competition for local solar sectors a little bit more challenging and interesting. But what we can see is the awarded tariff of ranging from 17.68 cents to about 24 cents or 24.8 cents is actually comparable or even lower to some of the thermal plant tariffs that TNB is buying from the IPP. So it just shows that going forward, solar has become one of the source of energy that is no more a premium. It is already, we can hit parity very, very soon. For LSS5, definitely a lot of developers like us are looking forward to. We are definitely looking, hope that Energy Commission will be able to float this tender very, very soon. But areas that where we have not been, Malaysia has not really been promoting very much, things like floating solar. I think this is somewhere that Malaysia should actually focusing a little bit more. And also medium-sized solar farms, where as we know that the acquisition of land, to find a suitable land for in Malaysia is getting more and more challenging, because more and more Malaysian companies are coming into the pictures. And we also see some what they call unequal or unbalanced policy of various state governments when it comes to the utilization of land. Converting from land into the solar project. Different states will have a different policy. This is something that maybe we should really have some, the state government will really need to take attention into. Maybe I also think that as what Ibrahim has said also, the rooftop solar is something that we have a lot of area with good sunlight, and then there are a lot of CNI, especially commercial industrial buildings with empty roof. That is where a good potential candidate for developing CNI solar rooftop sector in this region. If you look at our neighbors, for example, Vietnam last year, December alone, more than 9,000 megawatts of CNI rooftop solar were commissioned in 1 month, 9,000 megawatts in 1 month. So this is something that if there is enough incentive, if there's enough quota available, I'm sure there are a lot of investors, there are a lot of people who will put in what they call it, investment into this sector. As we know, there are a lot of multinational companies, especially, who are keen to buy renewable energy.
Mr. Gunn, if you don't mind me asking, is Leader Energy into the rooftop solar space?
Yes. We are now currently having close to 20 megawatts. We have rooftop solar projects in, as I said just now, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Taiwan, and Thailand. So we are already in. We are already having a 20 megawatts under operation. Another, I would say 80 megawatt under development. So by next year, I should hit about 100 megawatt just on CNI rooftop solar.
Understood. And I suppose your comment just now on land, maybe Encik Ibrahim, can take it on and somehow work it into one of those plans or something like, I know, I mean, it's difficult to sort of, push this, I think, because, land is land, right? It's governed by the National Land Code, they have land authorities, but maybe authorities should sit down and put heads together and try to, get something sorted. I mean, this has been a perennial issue, I think.
Yes.
Yep. I think most of the developers are facing that challenge.
Yeah.
If I may just add a little bit on that, like I see that based on our engagement with some of the state governments, we can see that some of the states are very welcoming on terms of the offering their lands for the solar developments. But I would say that this is mostly on the northern part of Malaysia, Peninsular Malaysia, that they are very welcoming. But compared to other states, they sometimes have some other plans for the land use. Sometimes they have different plans. So these are the alignments that need to be done between the federal government aspirations and also the states. And
I mean, I suppose more needs to be done, because you mentioned northern states. Even Kedah, right, has, I think they sort of allow a year-to-year sort of permit thing, but I think they should really look into allowing
just for information, Jack, they change their policy again. You know, when there's a change of government, unfortunately, the policy changes. As you know, we have 2 large-scale solar farms in Kedah at this moment, and we are facing some land conversion issues.
I see. Hopefully that gets sorted soon then. Stefan, I mean, what about you? I mean, you know, green cells, right? You have a huge footprint in Europe, right? Some projects in this part of the world as well. I know you have a plant in Pekan, right? What have you been up to? What has green cells been up to? Right? Are you in NEM, Celco, right? And you know, and what are the things that I think you face, right, as a foreign developer?
Yeah. So for Malaysia, besides our successful 44 megawatt DC LSS2 project, which was the first that applied single axis trackers combined with bifacial modules, we've also been engaged as EPC in NEM projects and Celco projects in Malaysia. We're also building a pipeline these days, and in the region we've had as EPC large-scale projects in the Philippines, Mindanao, in Vietnam, and right now we are developing new projects in Malaysia, subject to that is one of the challenges I'm going to probably comment on. Besides Malaysia, also that we develop in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and like Gambun net leader. Also, we are still looking in Vietnam because we believe this is a long-term sustainable market, which is very beneficial and very open to foreign investors. The key challenges, one of the more recent key challenges was obviously the tightening of foreign participation in the LSS program. So while LSS1 to LSS3 were open to 49% foreign minority shareholding, starting with LSS4, made foreign participation all but impossible for companies such as us with tight internal requirements on the viability of legal structures. So while we do understand and share the government's intention to create a level playing field for the local players, we believe this could be balanced with like some foreign involvement, as foreign companies like with our project there's a knowledge transfer, as you mentioned, Jack. We are a major player in Europe. A lot of technologies that are rolled out there or that were common there will find its way into Southeast Asia as well. So I remember at the time we discussed with ST and some of the agencies and also some of the banks that we are using single axis tracker and bifacial. It was for many the question, is that viable? Does that make sense in Malaysia? We're at the equator. Does it make, like, we cannot believe but it is viable. And if you look now, it's a lot of companies actually doing the same type of design. So we do think it's beneficial for Malaysia as well to have some foreign involvement. Knowledge transfer, we usually pay slightly higher wages to our local employees. And also on the cost regression, there's just the transfer between different market. We build in the US, we build in the Middle East, Europe. So there's always an exchange. Where's the new trends? What would work in other markets? So we hope that in future, not only in the LSS program, but also in other programs, foreigners will be considered, as there should be a balanced approach necessary. So no one wants to see LSS 3 race to the bottom, prices by some large foreign companies coming in and kind of quoting costs that then within a changing market environment are difficult to actually execute. But I think a balance like it was in LSS 1, 2, and 3 with foreign minority involvement should be beneficial to the country.
Yeah, I think that's something which we hear a lot, and hopefully, this, Encik Ibrahim, hopefully this is addressed somewhere. I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot, I know.
Yeah, I fully understand.
Yeah.
All these inputs are very good, because like these are part of the things that we are requires from the industry developers itself, because this is the kind of feedbacks that we need to formulate for the next RE programs, for example, to make sure that aside from pushing for the price down, we also want to make sure that the project can be sustainable throughout the PPA terms. Yeah,
of course. I mean, and speaking about technology, I mean, we have with us here technology providers, right? Solutions providers. I'll start with Elva, right, from Trina. Hi, how are you?
Hey, Jack, good afternoon.
Hi. So, I mean, we know Trina is a major player in the PV module space, right? I mean, if you don't mind, could you just give us a very quick rundown of your business in Malaysia, and what are your biggest challenges and opportunities for you here?
Okay, so actually Malaysia is always, of course, it's not the biggest in Southeast Asia, but I can say it's top 3. Of course, last year, like Mr. Gan said, the Vietnam market is quite crazy, but even before Vietnam, Malaysia is always the top 3, and I think the capacity is almost reach 1 gigawatt, the gigawatt scale, but unfortunately, most of the time it's quite tough. So maybe it's around like 800 megawatt or 900 megawatt, but it cannot really reach the gigawatt scale market. So which is quite pity. So like I think now the local players or overseas players always want to say Malaysia, the capacity can become bigger, at least to go for the gigawatt scale. And for Trina, of course, we are the solar panel supplier, but now we also involved in the tracker. So previously, we are more focused on the overseas players who handle the projects and the customer who doing the leasing program in Malaysia. Of course, both for the solar farm as well as a CNI project. And from the end of last year, we try to divest our direction. So more focus on the local players and the SME. Of course, like Mr. Gan and Stefan from Green Cell previous, I also worked together with them. And I think these 2 companies are quite pioneer because they would like to try the new technology. Like Stefan said, they are also the first company in Malaysia who use a bifacial plus a tracker system in the solar farm in the LSS2. Also leaders at that time, they also use, I think at that time still use a 166 technology. At that time, it's still considered very new technology. But of course, for now, maybe this technology also almost phased out within the next few years. But there are many companies who wanted to try the new technology, but unfortunately, because the LSS timing or the process, because once you provide the PPA, it's very hard to change the technology, etc., or it takes a long time. So many players, they still prefer to use the how to say, it's like old technology. I mean, like of course the product still there, but because Malaysia's like especially LSS, the time is quite long. Maybe let's say for LSS 4, for now LSS 4, the PPA signed this year and the COD maybe 2023, so it's around 2 to 3 years. But for the module technology, actually starting from 2019, we change very fast. Maybe your project not yet COD, the goods already phased out. So we also suggest the SEDA or TMB, they can just listen to the new technology and try to use the new technology and give some bonus. Yeah, like let's say now we are also like China, we are the pioneer on the 210 technology. So later, I think our product manager will also introduce our new technology. Yeah, so we will also would like to push the solar industry to the 6.0 era, which means the solar panel now can reach the 600 watt plus. Yeah, so I think for us, for China, we are in Malaysia, we try to promote the latest technology here, but not like still 400 or something. Yeah, so I think this is what we are doing, as well as we are strongly to push the tracker in Southeast Asian market. But Malaysia, I think currently only 3 projects, but I think previous got a lot in other Asian countries. Yeah. And of course, we focus on the LSS as well as CNI. Actually, CNI, I think, will be our main segment, because LSS, like now we still don't know whether we have LSS 5. If we have, then how big is it? And when is the COD time? It's not really so confirmed for us, because we are supplier. We will take the the shipment yearly, but not like as 2 or 3 years. So CNI part will be more stable for us. And I think it's good that in Malaysia, always we have the NEM or self-consumption is going, and every year it's, I think, increase maybe 100 megawatt per year. So which is quite be good. So currently, like this year, we will majority focus on the CNI rooftop project.
Understood. I have a question for you, but I'll probably save it to the back, right? I mean, because we're on the note on technology and whatnot. I mean, we can ask Kylie, so Kai, right, from Chin Power, right, to just give a view as well, right, on the technological aspect. I mean, Chin Power is a new entrant to the Malaysian market, right? So I think if you don't mind just quickly giving us a background as to what Chin does, right? Its marketing strategy, and what is the future trend of the of Chin's future plans in Malaysia.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah, actually, for the CPS was founded in the 2009 and have more than 15 years histories, belong to the Chin Group, and we can prevent the PV inverter to our client and the PCS for the storage system. But in the past 6 years, we main focus at the North American market and have the #1 market share in the US. But last year, in the 2020, we expand into Asia market, especially in Malaysia. We will prevent competitive price for the CNI and also SS projects. For the product, actually, we think the high power string inverter will be welcomed by more and more ground PV stations owner, because O&M cost will be more cheaper and the LCOE will be better. And for the CNI application, more simple and diverse communication will be favored by the end user. Yeah, as a main product, CPS will provide the 110 kilowatt string inverter to the CNI market, provide 275 kilowatt string inverter to the ground PV plant. Yeah, last year, CPS have developed the largest capacity string inverter, which is 275 kilowatt for the Malaysia market. It has the best temperature performance because the nominal power at 40 degrees without any power derating is very suitable for the Malaysia's market. This inverter can increase the power generation by 1% and also reduce the BOS cost compared with others. Yeah.
Thanks, Kai. Just one follow-up question, right?
Yeah.
How do I put it? Do you think that, I mean, it's a very competitive market, right? It's a very congested market as well. There are plenty of solutions providers, right? Do you consider yourself a little bit late to the party, or, you know, or do you think it's still early days?
No, but we will find more partners in the Malaysia's local market to build the service systems. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for your response. And I mean, the next question, going back to Ibrahim, right? Seda, I mean, we spoke about, you touched about third-party access, right? You spoke about corporate PPAs. What about the other things that, you know, that Seda was previously, I think, you know, exploring, like P2P trading, right? Renewable energy certs. I mean, you know, and the carbon trading scheme. I know some of these may fall under Seda's ambit, some of them don't, right? But I mean, could you give us some views on, you know, all these programs, the status of them? Because there seem to be so many of them, but we're not really sure at what, you know, stage are we at, you know, each of them.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. So in response to that, I would say that the drivers coming from the top, and because like before this, when we are looking into more towards the low carbon pathway, but as mentioned by Mr. Jack just now, that yesterday we already like get the news regarding that the Malaysia commitment towards the carbon neutral agenda. So I would say that this towards realizing these targets, like I would say that before this, is basically before yesterday. Like our direction is more towards realizing our targets to the Paris Agreement 2015, which is to reduce the carbon intensity by 45% by 2030, and to realize the RE target, 31% and 40%. So I would say that currently we are looking to just that. And when we are looking at just that, we can see that the current mechanism seems as might be able to accommodate for all interests. For example, like we have the large scale solar to promote for ground mounted or floating solar, and we have the net energy metering to promote for the rooftop markets, for example, and we have the feed-in tariff to promote for other resources. But looking at this, the current commitment that when we're going to the carbon neutrals, more initiative need to be done, and it's just not on the power sector itself, and it is require more towards cross-sectorals. And as we can see that towards these carbon emissions and carbon targets, it actually involves more industry, more sectors, including the urban developments, including the transportations, for example. And this kind of initiative need to be collaborative and work together among the cross-sectoral and cross-ministries. So I would say that the carbon trading is an effort by another Ministry of Environment towards addressing the totality from all sectors' contributions to the carbon emissions. So these are indeed a very good tools, but the talk on this carbon trading also has been going on about, I would say, 1 to 2 years. And currently I say that they are developing the tracking platforms to enable for this kind of tradings. I would say sometime, hopefully by sometime next year, we can already like start something the alpha phase for this project itself. And with regards to the P2P, for example, that before last year, we already like concluded the assessment, and we can see a good response from the industry players to participate either as the seller, as the producer, or also as the buyer. So we can see a good market response towards this demand. But however, currently we are like last time we already embarked on the alpha phase, and one of the enablers is to determine the grid charges to allow for the something like some people call it grid charges and some people might refer it to the tolling charges to utilize the existing transmission or distributions facilities to allow for the peer-to-peer tradings. So currently these are the mechanisms that still being formulated by the energy commissions. And also aside from this, we also try to embark on a smaller scale. If you can see from the NEM 3.0, under the NEM Nova, we already like allow for the virtual aggregations. So these are one of the ways to test back the technology if Malaysia is already like ready for this peer-to-peer tradings. So to allow for a smaller scale deployment, we only allocate it for the NEM Nova, the 300 megawatt. That's the limitation we did it. So upon the successful of these mechanisms, we can gain more insights and more data from the industry to see that if we can upscale the deployment for this kind of tradings. So then again, like looking forward in terms of introducing more renewable energy in the industry, we already also like receive a lot of new resources, new modules to be implemented. To name a few, like corporate PPAs, TPA, and we're also now talking about cross-border energy supply. So a lot of this is on the plate, and currently the ministry is juggling to which is have the best values to the nations and enable can unlock for more social economic benefits. So like in line with, for example, like the large scale solar, it is good in terms of boosting up the capacity from the renewables in the nations, but as we can see, compared to like the NEM nature of projects, more people can benefit from this kind of projects because it's a smaller scale, distributed, and more players can be participated in. Compared to the large scale solar, it is a huge investment of projects, and limited parties need to be can embark on this kind of program. So a good balance between these two models, for example, need to balance out to make sure that the benefits from this renewable energy can be felt by many.
Thanks for your input, right? And I mean, since we have a regulator, policymaker here, right, Mr. Gan, I think we really have to make the best use of our, our opportunity, right? I mean, you mentioned issues, just now with, building plants in Malaysia, and you have, participated in Vietnam. I mean, regional plants as well. What do you, what do you think, can be sort of learned? What can we learn from all, all these other nations? I mean, of course, each of us, I think, do well in certain aspects, right? I mean, we are not, to say very far behind, right, or very far ahead. But what do you think we can learn from these places where you have participated in?
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Ibrahim. In fact, what you have just said, Ibrahim, actually taken out a lot of words out of my mouth. Because one of the focus or key area that I think that especially Malaysia can improve on is the corporate PPA and the third party peer-to-peer PPA. Because for example, I'm also active in Philippines. The third party PPA is already very actively being utilized there. You can actually have a solar farm in the southern part of Luzon supplying to a customer in Manila, through the private, another transmission network. So this is something that definitely in Malaysia, that is something that I have already identified it actually something that we should be able to really go into. And if we look into the country in the region, most of the countries have already gone into that. Even Vietnam is already looking into corporate PPA. Malaysia, I'm actually happy with what has been announced yesterday and what you have, Ibrahim just said. So there are a lot of other opportunities. For example, the quota for CNI rooftop solar, the rate of take up, if you look at for the CNI this year, it was just a couple of months and it's already fully taken up. So I believe through MPIA and a lot of these associations, we have been appealing to SEDA to enlarge or come up with a bigger quota for open up, because definitely there are a lot of potential opportunities that a lot of developers are looking at, and back to the corporate PPA. In fact, I've been approached a couple of times by some of these multinational companies whether I'm able to supply them green energy, but unfortunately, because I am dealing with some of them in other countries, in Indonesia, in Singapore. So they are looking into investment in Malaysia, but then one of the criteria is, of course, whether they are able to get supply of so-called the green energy. This is where the corporate PPA and also the third-party PPA, peer-to-peer PPA, where it's going to be interesting if it's open up. And definitely, as I said, I'm excited what has been announced yesterday by the Prime Minister under the 12 Malaysian Plan. The government is targeted to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 45%, but definitely, and also carbon neutral nation by 2050. As the Chair Ibrahim had just said, they need a lot of cross-sectional and urban development. For example, we are also looking into some of the EV charging in Singapore, because I think you know, the Singapore is also pushing for EV charging policies, electric car, and very soon they also slowly want to remove the carbon, what they call petroleum car. So you need a government policy that push for it. So things like EV charging, things like battery storage, this is something that I believe in line with this government 12 Malaysian plan to achieve carbon neutrality. That is something that a lot of effort needs to be done. The other topic I want to touch on is what I've just said also, Ibrahim, is on the carbon trading, carbon pricing and carbon tax. For example, again, I'm using the Singapore example, the REC, Renewable Energy Certificate, is already widely traded in Singapore. In Malaysia, even though there is an opportunity, but it has not been really promoted. And unfortunately for large-scale solar farms in Malaysia, if we look at our PPA, the green attribute belongs to TNB. It's not even I developed the solar farm, I put in investment, but I don't enjoy the green attribute. It goes straight away to TNB. This is something that, you know, I think maybe to be fair to the developer, this green attribute should go back to the developer who actually put in money and investment and effort into the project. Jack, these are some of the views that I have. Of course, I can continue talking for another next 1 hour, but I believe I would want to give other people a chance to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask, I guess, Stefan as well, right? I mean, from the EU, right? Do you have any input or insight from, you know, green cells experience from, you know, from the EU? You know, how are there any frameworks, regulations, or programs that you think, you know, we can probably consider, right?
Yeah, well, not so much from the EU. I think the EU now with its markets, in many countries the EU simply doesn't need any incentive schemes anymore because electricity costs are comparably high, and at least in the southern European countries such as Spain, Italy, markets there do not need incentives anymore. So what is certainly helpful and what we already touched on before is regulation in terms of like land conversion and those. So in general, I would say where the EU market works fairly well is in being predictable. So in having in the past the subsidy schemes that were running with a few exemptions like 2008 in Spain, but kind of consistently running the program, which allows all stakeholders, the citizens, to plan. So what makes it a bit challenging is if programs change in between. So I mentioned earlier, LSS for us as a foreign investor, we were prepared to submit an LSS4 project, just then to be stopped like basically shortly before the finishing line. And the same is a bit what also Ganbun commented on, and Ibrahim as well, is the NEM project was, I think it took off fairly slowly. It required a lot of explaining and convincing customers of the benefits, why they should do that. For many it was, what is the payback time? Why would I do that? So in the end, the industry, I think, did a very good job together with the government to convince Malaysian companies that this is a very, very viable and beneficial approach. But then, rather than continuing the program by increasing the quota, there was a complete revision. So I do appreciate, Ibrahim, all the work that went into it. It was very thought through, but I think for us it was sometimes difficult then to go back and say, okay, so we can't run like the projects we have been planning for a year is not going to work the same way. So we have to change it now to Selco. Here's the new numbers. So that makes it always a bit difficult to plan ahead. One one other, not so much European approach, but another approach that could be very interesting, I believe, for Malaysia, which worked in the US, is the Renewable Portfolio Standard. So to kind of leave it to the market and to TMB, which is one of the largest utility companies in Southeast Asia, and with a very, very stable grid, a lot of experience, to kind of do the government's job in coming up with a right approach. So under the RCPS, it would be basically the government obliging or setting certain targets for TMB to buy or to contribute a certain share in renewables, which then usually leads to the situation where TMB, as they have done before, will do some investments in renewable themselves, but they will also, through single buyer, probably start their own auctions, their own RFPs, and their own direct negotiation projects. So which kind of takes a bit the burden from the regulator to look into every detail and to have an ear at the market, what is going on, and rather moves it into the energy generation industry. So in the US, that was very successful. It's very long-term plannable. So that would certainly be something for the future that could be interesting for Malaysia too, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point on getting, one single entity to do it. I mean, I suppose the benefit of having a monopoly like TNB is that the government can, incentivize them to, do as you've said, right? They would have sorted out a huge chunk of their problems, right, without, having to go to every single small player out there to, get them to do that. I mean, on I suppose everything, things will change if there's a if there's a change in, I mean, ultimately it's what is the benefit to me, right? I mean, we are all corporations, I mean, all of us, businesses. I mean, yes, there's a certain sustainability impact, but I think, there's also the price aspect to it. Like there's also the whole aspect of, how will it hit my bottom line, right? And I suppose if you can give people, the right incentives or the right guidance, right, things like that can be achieved, right? And on the note of pricing, I mean, we have a question for Elva, actually, Trina, right? So this question is from Yo Kiet Lim. I mean, his question is, we have been getting feedback from our counterparts that the pricing of silicon wafers is trending upwards, right? So it's been moving up, I think, a while, right? And the business of solar manufacturers in Malaysia may be affected, right, due to investigation by the US government into circumvention of solar anti-dumping measures. I think, Malaysia, Vietnam, right? Considering these factors, what will be the impact on pricing on solar modules for the remainder of the year and probably into 2022 as well?
Wow, that's a very hard question. Actually, just before our webinar, actually, we just got one news that the silicon price for today actually is already reached 260 RMB per kilogram. So just let's go back for, let's say, maybe in Q2 last year, the silicon price is only 80. So now it's 260. So it's around more than three times. So that's why I understand that this year, not only module supplier, but all the EPC developer are all quite suffering. And we also predict actually Q4, the cost will be more crazy due to the dual control policy in China, because China now we also need to have a zero carbon, and also to different province and different towns, because it's driven by the policy. And they said actually for next year, we also didn't really predict the silicon price will drop suddenly, because currently I think for COVID as a pandemic, everyone already get used to it. So it won't be the barrier for us now, but the issue is that the demand will still be huge. So we predict the next year will be, the global demand will still be more than 200 gigawatt, but the silicon supply will be, it's only a bit more than 200 gigawatt. So we can see the supply and the demand is quite balanced. And currently, because I think now the different province in China, we also have the restriction on the electricity consumption. So that's why every factory in every province, we need to reduce our capacity to we need to get rid of some low efficient capacity. So I believe it will continue until next year. Currently, I think no one can tell this the customer how much will be the pricing next year. But anyway, we are not really so positive. Let's say when customer talking with us on like when the time like the panel can go for lower than 20 cents below, maybe it's gone already. Yeah, because the inflation, we all understand that the inflation is there. It's not only for the solar panel. I think all the material already increased. Yeah. So
what about you, Kai? I mean, you know, are you facing the same issues as Elva? I mean, the manufacturing constraints in China, for example, are your products also suffering a fluctuation in prices or quite stable?
I think soon. Yeah, soon. I think our factory will also, I think all the factory will be affected. We have to reduce the capacity because currently our supplier like EVA, glass, and silicon, they all have the restriction on the capacity, which means our raw material supply will be in huge shortage compared to last 3 quarters. Yeah, so yeah, so that's why you can see actually the EVA maybe within 1 hour it can increase 200%. I think you never saw this for last 10 years. And one day the polysilicon price can increase 20%. Yeah, so we never expected. So that's why like for the downstream, like a solar cell or solar panel suppliers, so we are also quite suffering because let's say we already give the promise to the client, but our supplier cannot give us the goods or they have to increase their price. So now this is a very embarrassing time for everyone. Yeah, so that's why like we always, I think China, we really made lots of webinars, and not only for Malaysia, for Europe and for America, because we also wanted to pass the information to all the investors or the regulation maker, because for panel, our margin is already very thin already. So you can check all the top 5 or top 10 module supplier. Of course, except for solar. Yeah, I think for silicon, for the Chinese manufacturer, our gross margin is only around 10%. So, and our net profit also maybe single digital 5% or something. So there's not so much space for the module supply to reduce. So then like currently everyone is talking about the LCOE instead of like the module cost or inverter cost, because we have to use a new technology to, let's say you use the same module or inverter, but your other cost can be reduced. So your LCOE can be lower. So this is the information we pass to the market, and as well as like currently not only China, every top supplier are promoting the N-type. So we're trying to make the generation higher with less DC capacity. So your LCOE can be lower. So that's why like when I talk with a client on the LSS4, I also ask them question whether your DC capacity can be changed. This is very important because you cannot say, oh, during PPA, when you sign the PPA, you said that your DC-AC ratio is 1.3 or 1.5, then you cannot reduce, because when the module or inverter or technology improved or updated, then you can use less DC capacity. You can use a bifacial or tracker or N-type to reduce your cost, because currently the silicon, I think that this cost, no one can give the exact answer. Even until, of course, we are sure it will be, in fact, it has a negative impact for next year. But how about the 2023? We have no idea. We also needed to check like how this inflation can go. But maybe normally it will go last for several years. Yeah.
That's good. I suppose if you can give a price now for 2023, a lot of people will be writing to you after this.
Yeah, but we really cannot meet the target price. Yeah.
Yeah. Our host has asked us to wrap up, right? Unfortunately, I think we've used up our time, right? Sorry about that. I mean, we would love to, continue speaking to our panelists, but, we need to wrap up. I think there's a next session. So, I mean, thank you everyone for spending your time, right, this afternoon, right, giving your thoughts on this matter. I think the space will be an evolving one and a very interesting one, right, especially with the announcement by the Prime Minister yesterday. I think we will see a lot of progress soon. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Encik Ibrahim, in advance for taking on our comments and questions and issues. And
yeah, look forward. Like if any time else outside this platform that we want to have a further discussion, we are most welcome. We really love to talk with all the developers and technology providers to enhance the policy making for the future path.
Sure.
Right, thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great thanks to our speakers for wonderful discussion and insight sharing.